What if a single company didn't just sell products to the world, but became the system through which the world buys, sells, and survives? Right now, in the present global economy, the foundations for this shift already exist. Supply chains optimized by artificial intelligence. Consumer behavior predicted before desire becomes conscious. Logistics networks moving faster than governments can regulate. Data flowing across borders with more freedom than laws can contain. At the center of this transformation stands Amazon, no longer just a retailer, but a digital, logistical, and economic infrastructure spanning the planet. This is not science fiction. It is a global economy. What if scenario hiding in plain sight? A single regulatory failure. A worldwide crisis that rewards efficiency over resilience. An AI-driven breakthrough that makes every competing system slower, more expensive, and irrelevant. In moments like these, markets do not debate ethics. They converge on scale, speed, and control. Stay with the simulation until the end. What you are about to discover may reshape how you see future predictions, megacorporations, and the fragile balance between convenience and power. In an alternate economy dominated by data and automation, control does not arrive through force. It arrives through habit, through optimization, through systems that feel invisible because they work too well. As independent retailers fade into data sets and governments struggle to define sovereignty in a platform-driven world, a deeper question begins to emerge. Perhaps the future of the world economy is no longer decided by policy or borders, but by infrastructure, by who owns the rails of commerce, the flows of goods, and the algorithms that decide price, visibility, and survival. This transition does not begin with collapse, but with comfort, with speed, with efficiency that slowly replaces choice. And it is exactly here, at the moment convenience becomes dependence, that this alternate economic timeline begins to take shape. If the simulation resonates with you, pause for a moment and reflect. Does this future feel exaggerated or uncomfortably plausible? Share a short thought in the comments about what stood out to you so far. These conversations help refine how we explore alternate economy scenarios like this one. And if this analysis adds value to how you think about the global economy, a simple like signals that these future predictions deserve to reach others asking the same questions. Subscribing, if it feels right, is a quiet way of staying connected to more global economy, what if timelines as they unfold. Now, return your focus to the simulation, because once this shift begins, it doesn't announce itself. It accelerates. In the early years, the changes appear incremental, almost invisible, new efficiencies, better prices, faster delivery, smarter systems. But beneath the surface, the structure of retail, labor, and market power starts to realign. This is where the timeline truly moves forward, where the first years set forces in motion that can no longer be easily reversed. In the first years of this alternate timeline, the transformation doesn't arrive as a shock. It arrives quietly, almost politely. Prices drop across categories. Delivery times shrink. Friction disappears. Behind the scenes, Amazon accelerates acquisitions, folds competitors into its ecosystem, and applies relentless pressure on margins that smaller retailers simply cannot survive. One by one, local stores, regional chains, and independent platforms dissolve into data, warehouses, or third-party seller accounts. Employment begins to shift just as silently. Traditional retail jobs decline, replaced by warehouse automation, logistics coordination, AI-driven inventory management, and platform-dependent micro-entrepreneurship. Millions don't lose work overnight. They migrate. They adapt. They become sellers inside the system, drivers for the system, analysts optimizing their visibility within the system. Choice still exists, but it is filtered, ranked, and recommended by a single algorithmic gatekeeper, shaping demand in real time. Now I want to go deeper into what happens next. As these early impacts stabilize, governments and central banks are forced into reactive mode. Some attempt regulation, but discover that enforcement lags years behind innovation. Others quietly partner, integrating Amazon's infrastructure into national supply chains, emergency logistics, even public services. Megacorporations face a stark decision: integrate, specialize, or disappear. Banking systems adapt to faster consumption cycles. Monetary policy struggles to keep pace with an economy where pricing power is no longer dispersed, but centralized. As the decade unfolds, the global order begins to reconfigure. New blocks emerge. Economies align with Amazon's infrastructure versus those attempting to build sovereign alternatives. Trade is no longer defined by borders alone, but by platform access. Data flows become more valuable than commodities. AI optimization becomes a source of geopolitical leverage. Power shifts away from states toward systems that coordinate consumption at planetary scale. Two extreme futures branch from the same foundation. In one, efficiency unlocks an abundance economy. Costs fall, access expands, and material scarcity fades for billions. In the other, concentration tightens. Wealth, data, and influence accumulate, reducing economic freedom to a series of optimized choices within invisible boundaries. Both outcomes feel logical. Both emerge from the same design. When this new order stabilizes, the deepest impacts are no longer economic, but human. Daily routines align with predictive systems. Purpose drifts from creation to optimization. Culture becomes an output of algorithms responding to engagement. The collective mindset shifts, not through force, but through convenience. And beneath it all, a quiet question lingers about autonomy, identity, and the true cost of efficiency. If this part of the journey resonates with you, write in the comments. That makes sense to me. As the timeline moves into years 3 through 7, the scale of transformation becomes impossible to ignore. What once felt like market dominance now resembles structural dependence. Nation-states begin to realize that they are no longer regulating a company operating inside their economies. They are negotiating with an economic system larger than many of their own. Amazon controls logistics arteries, cloud infrastructure, data flows, and consumer access points that governments themselves rely on to function. In the early phase of this reaction, regulatory institutions attempt familiar tools: antitrust hearings, market investigations, policy debates that assume time is still available. But enforcement moves slowly, while platforms move at algorithmic speed. By the time new rules are drafted, market structures have already adapted around them. What emerges instead is fragmentation. Some governments choose confrontation, attempting to reclaim control through delayed crackdowns that struggle to reverse consolidation already embedded into daily life. Others make a different decision. Facing supply chain fragility, public service inefficiencies, and political pressure to maintain stability, they partner. National logistics integrate with private infrastructure. Public procurement flows through optimized platforms. Digital identity, healthcare delivery, and emergency response quietly depend on systems originally built for commerce. These choices are framed as temporary solutions, but they reshape sovereignty in ways few initially understand. Now I want to go deeper into the corporate response. Rival megacorporations face a narrowing set of options. Some attempt resistance and collapse under the weight of scale they cannot match. Others integrate, becoming specialized layers within a dominant ecosystem. Banking, manufacturing, media, and even food systems adapt themselves around a central retail and data core. Market competition doesn't disappear. It is absorbed, redirected, and optimized. As the decade progresses, this alignment reshapes the global map. New blocks form not strictly by geography, but by platform allegiance. Economies align with this infrastructure experience stability and efficiency, while others pursue costly alternatives in the name of autonomy. Data becomes a strategic asset. AI coordination becomes a source of geopolitical leverage. The world economy reorganizes itself around access, not borders. From this foundation, two extreme outcomes quietly emerge. In one path, efficiency compounds into abundance. Costs fall, distribution improves, and material access expands on a scale history has never seen. In the other, concentration deepens. Decisions narrow. Dependency increases. Economic participation feels optional, but only within invisible constraints defined by systems few can influence. When this new order begins to stabilize, the most profound impact is not measured in GDP, but in mindset. Daily routines align with predictive models. Careers become journeys of adaptation rather than creation. Purpose shifts from ownership to optimization. The truth hidden in the background of this future is subtle. Transformation did not erase choice. It redefined it. And as this realization settles in, a deeper layer of this timeline starts to reveal itself. One that forces an even more uncomfortable question about control, identity, and what comes next. At this point, if the scenario feels coherent to you, write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. As the timeline advances into years 7 through 15, the transformation crosses a threshold. What once operated as a dominant corporation now functions as something closer to an economic layer of the planet itself. Amazon no longer competes within markets. It defines how markets operate. Logistics standards, pricing norms, delivery expectations, and data flows are calibrated around its systems, shaping global commerce with quiet authority. In the early part of this phase, the shift is technical. Supply chains synchronize. Inventory prediction becomes near perfect. AI systems coordinate demand and distribution across continents in real time. Over time, these efficiencies harden into norms. Entire industries design themselves around compatibility rather than competition. To exist outside this infrastructure becomes slower, more expensive, and increasingly symbolic. Now I want to go even deeper into what this means geopolitically. As years pass, new blocks of power emerge, not drawn by borders but by alignment. Some economies integrate fully, gaining stability, access, and efficiency in exchange for dependency. Others resist, attempting to build sovereign retail networks, domestic AI infrastructure, and alternative logistics systems. These efforts are costly, politically fragile, and slow. Economic sovereignty is no longer just about currency or trade policy. It becomes about who controls access to consumers' data and distribution. Along this journey, two extreme futures crystallize from the same foundation. In one path, an abundance economy takes shape. Automation lowers costs. Access expands. Goods become cheaper and more predictable. Scarcity recedes for large segments of humanity. In the other path, concentration deepens. Decision-making power narrows. Participation feels voluntary, but exit becomes almost impossible. Choice exists, but only within parameters defined by systems operating far from public scrutiny. When this new order begins to stabilize, the most profound impact unfolds within society itself. Daily routines adapt to predictive systems. Human decisions increasingly respond to algorithmic signals. Careers become continuous journeys of adjustment rather than long-term paths of mastery. The mentality collectiva shifts subtly, prioritizing optimization over exploration, stability over autonomy. The truth hidden in the background of this future is not control through force, but through comfort. And as this realization settles in, another layer of this alternate timeline starts to surface, one that raises deeper questions about identity, purpose, and what it truly means to participate in an economy that knows you better than you know yourself. If this evolution feels plausible to you, write in the comments. That future feels closer than I expected. As this alternate timeline continues to unfold, the system reaches a critical divergence. The same dominance, built through efficiency, scale, and AI coordination, begins to produce radically different realities depending on how it is governed. The first path is often described as an abundance economy. In this version of the future, hyper-efficiency compounds year after year. Near-instant delivery becomes a norm. Cost of living fall as logistics waste disappears. Access replaces ownership, and material scarcity fades for billions. For many, this feels like progress finally catching up with human needs. In the early stages of this outcome, daily life becomes smoother. Time once lost to errands, delays, and friction is reclaimed. Economic participation expands as barriers to entry collapse. Small creators reach global markets instantly. Consumption becomes predictable, stable, optimized. The impact feels positive, even liberating. Decisions are easier. Life feels lighter. And the system appears benevolent precisely because it works so well. Now I want to go deeper into the second path, because it emerges just as quietly. In this version, efficiency does not distribute power. It concentrates it. Wealth pools upward. Data ownership narrows. Decision-making migrates away from individuals and communities into opaque systems optimized for scale. Consumers are not excluded. They are absorbed. Participation is constant, but exit becomes unthinkable. Every choice exists, yet every option is shaped in advance. Over time, this concentration economy reshapes the mentality collectiva. People stop asking what they want and start responding to what is offered. Autonomy fades not through force, but through convenience. The truth hidden in the background of this future is unsettling. Dependence does not feel like control when it is comfortable. It feels like stability. As years pass and this order stabilizes, society adapts around it. Careers become fluid, reactive, optimized for platform relevance. Identity shifts from long-term purpose to continuous adjustment. Human journeys are measured in engagement, ratings, performance metrics. Culture fragments into algorithmic feedback loops. The Bastidors del Futuro reveal a subtle transformation, not of systems alone, but of expectations, ambitions, and meaning. Both futures originate from the same dominance. The difference is not technology, but governance. Not AI, but who defines its incentives. And as this realization takes hold, another layer of the simulation begins to surface. One that forces us to confront what remains human when optimization becomes a default lens to which life is organized. If this contrast feels real to you, write in the comments, I see both futures. When this system fully settles, the deepest transformation is no longer economic or technological. It becomes human. Over the years, work quietly changes its meaning. Selling products is no longer the core activity. Visibility is. Livelihoods depend less on what is created and more on how well it is positioned, ranked, and surfaced inside Amazon's ecosystem. Success is measured in discoverability. Survival becomes a constant exercise in optimization. In the early stages of this shift, the impact feels manageable. People learn the rules. They adapt their behavior. They study dashboards instead of customers. But as time passes, this logic spreads everywhere. Careers turn into ongoing negotiations with algorithms. Decisions are guided by performance metrics that update in real time. The journey of work becomes less about mastery and more about remaining relevant inside systems that never stop recalibrating. Now, I want to go even deeper into what happens beyond labor. As the years pass, local culture and independent commerce don't vanish. They thin out. Craftsmanship survives, but as a signal rather than a foundation. Regional identity becomes a category, searchable and monetized, optimized for niche demand. Markets still look diverse on the surface, but beneath them, the same recommendation engines quietly decide what is seen, what scales, and what disappears. Along this transformation, the meaning of economic freedom begins to shift. Ownership feels inefficient. Access feels rational. Choice still exists, but it is guided, narrowed, and softened into recommendation. People don't feel restricted. They feel assisted. The truth hidden in the background of this future is subtle. Autonomy is no longer exercised through decision, but through selection among pre-filtered options. As this order stabilizes, daily routines align almost perfectly with predictive systems. Consumption anticipates desire. Logistics anticipate movement. The mentality collective adjusts, valuing comfort, speed, and reliability over uncertainty and expiration. Identity becomes modular. Purpose becomes adaptive. The human role in the economy transforms from agent to participant, always connected, always accounted for. And yet, beneath this optimized surface, something unresolved remains. A quiet tension between efficiency and meaning, between convenience and authorship, between living inside a system and shaping one. This is where the simulation begins to reveal its most uncomfortable layer, one that challenges how we define freedom, value, and human agency in a world where the economy already knows our next move. If this part of the scenario resonates with you, write in the comments. This feels uncomfortably familiar. By the time this alternate timeline reaches maturity, there is no dramatic collapse to point to. No single day when the world changes. What defines this future is how normal it feels. Amazon's dominance does not arrive through disruption, but through habit, through convenience layered so deeply into daily life that it becomes indistinguishable from infrastructure itself. In the early years, people notice the benefits. Over time, they stop noticing the system at all. It simply works. Goods arrive before they are missed. Prices adjust before discomfort appears. Supply adapts before scarcity can be felt. What once required effort now feels automatic. And this is where the true impact settles in, not in markets, but in expectations. Society begins to assume that optimization is the natural state of the world. Now I want to go even deeper into this realization. When a single platform becomes a global marketplace, power no longer needs to announce itself. It is embedded in defaults, in recommendations, in invisible trade-offs decided far from public view. The truth hidden in the background of this future is that efficiency is not neutral. It carries values. It encodes priorities. And once those priorities are scaled globally, opting out becomes less a choice and more a sacrifice. As years pass and this order stabilizes, governments adapt to managing outcomes rather than shaping systems. Corporations optimize within constraints they no longer define. Individuals navigate lives structured by predictive logic that feels supportive, yet quietly directive. The mentality collective shifts again, not toward resistance, but toward acceptance. The journey becomes about navigating the system well, not questioning why it exists in this form. Economic freedom, one's associated with ownership and agency, is reinterpreted as seamless access. Control becomes difficult to locate because it is everywhere and nowhere at once. Decisions still feel personal, yet their range has already been optimized. The revelation is subtle, almost uncomfortable. When a system anticipates you perfectly, it leaves little room for surprise or authorship. This is not a story about villains or heroes. It is a reflection on readiness, on whether societies are prepared to live inside systems that are more efficient than democratic, more responsive than public institutions, and more permanent than policy. In a world where one platform becomes a marketplace, the infrastructure and the memory of commerce itself, the question quietly shifts. It is no longer about whether such power works. It is about who, if anyone, truly controls it, and what that means for the future still unfolding beyond this point. If this question stayed with you, write in the comments, "This question matters." If you stayed until this point, it tells me something important. It tells me that these questions matter to you too. This channel exists for exactly that reason. To explore what-if economy scenarios, alternate timelines, and future predictions that don't offer easy answers, but clear perspectives on where the global economy might be heading. If the simulation challenged the way you think about power, convenience, and control, consider subscribing, not as a gesture, but as a way to stay inside this ongoing exploration of alternate economic futures, where we test ideas, follow consequences, and examine the systems quietly shaping tomorrow. You can also leave a short comment, letting me know you reached the end. Something simple like, "This future really made me think." Those signals matter more than they seem. They help this kind of long-form, reflective analysis reach others who are also searching for deeper understanding, not just headlines. And if this journey added value to your perspective, a like helps the simulation travel further. There's another scenario waiting right here, one that connects directly with what we just explored. Another alternate economy, another timeline branching from this one. Click it and keep going with me there. Because the future doesn't arrive all at once, that IT unfolds, one decision at a time.